as the ambassador for Barbados, for the Caribbean region. I will invite now Ambassador David Commissiong. I think you're not speaking in that position, and you will make that clear yourself. So please, come in, David.
Thank you, Luke. Good day, brothers and sisters, comrades all. It's really a pleasure to be here addressing this meeting. Full respect to the Caribbean Labor Solidarity. This is an organization that is definitely still needed in our region. I am Barbados's ambassador to CARICOM and incidentally to the Association of Caribbean States as well. But I prefer to speak today not so much in that official capacity because the Barbados government has not really made any pronouncement on the issue that we will be addressing this morning. So I prefer to speak in my capacity as a citizen of the Caribbean and as a proud graduate of the University of the West Indies. But a quick note to Caribbean Labor Solidarity. CARICOM recently designated the Caribbean Congress of Labor as an associate institution of CARICOM. They also at the same time designated the Caribbean Private Sector Organization also as an associate institution of CARICOM. That means that they get to work with CARICOM, they get to be at the table, they get to collaborate, they get to bring their ideas. But I must tell you that the private sector body has engaged in a much more organized and effective manner than the labor organization. So clearly, the labor organization needs help. They need assistance and solidarity. And I just throw that out. Maybe Caribbean Labor Solidarity could reach out to the Caribbean Congress of Labor with a view to helping them to better prepare themselves, organize themselves to be that CARICOM associate institution. Now, I speak to you today against the background of the Caribbean community being in a very serious crisis. COVID-19 has impacted tremendously on the economies of the Caribbean. We are the most tourism and travel dependent region in the entire world. And so COVID has hit our region harder than any other region of this world. So we are in a very serious existential crisis. Many of the things that we have fought for and built up for ourselves over the decades and even centuries are now in jeopardy. So this is a very difficult time for us. If we are to get through this crisis safely, two of the instruments that are critical to us are our University of the West Indies and our CARICOM Reparations Campaign. We are actually deploying the reparations campaign to help us achieve the kind of international support we need in terms of financial resources, in terms of policy space, in terms of institutional support from important institutions of the important financial and developmental institutions of the international community. So reparations is intrinsic to a survival strategy for the Caribbean, as is the University of the West Indies. So it is against that background that we have to address this topic of in defense of the University of the West Indies, its Vice-Chancellor and its reparations campaign, because the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Sir Hillary Beckles, is really a central figure in both the University of the West Indies and the CARICOM Reparations Campaign, which also has its location in the University of the West Indies. So he is a key personality in the whole strategy of the Caribbean community going forward. Let's look a little bit at Beckles. So Beckles is born in Barbados, 1955, as a teenager, goes to the UK, does his university education in the UK, University of Hull, attains his doctorate, and then comes back to the Caribbean, to the University of the West Indies, as a young lecturer in economic history. Initially, around 1980, he goes to the Mona campus, and after a few years, he comes back home to Barbados, to the Cave Hill campus. He immediately comes to Barbados, he emerges as the premier public intellectual at the Cave Hill campus. He has a tremendous impact on Barbadian society. He makes tremendous contributions in terms of unearthing the history of resistance in Barbados, elevating General Bussar, the great slave revolutionary hero. He advances a campaign of economic democracy in Barbados, where we take on some of the powerful white traditional dominated corporations to democratize them. And so he plays a very tremendous role. Eventually, he is, in 2002, he's elevated principal of the Cave Hill campus. For 13 years, he then undertakes a mission to transform the Cave Hill campus. He develops the Cave Hill campus virtually from a glorified secondary school, not in terms of its standards, but in terms of its institutional density as a university. It was really a glorified secondary school, and he transforms it into a gem of a university campus. I mean, you name it, whether it's Faculty of Medicine, the Barbados Center for Creative Imagination, the Usain Bolt Sports Complex, the entire cricket program to rescue West Indies cricket, to institutionalize cricket studies. We can go on and on, you know, tremendous work. So we in Barbados know the quality of this man. In 2013, while he is still principal of the Cave Hill campus, CARICOM decides to launch a reparations campaign. And the CARICOM heads of government requests Sir Hillary Beckles to assume the role of chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. That's 2013. So he undertakes that role at the request of the heads of government of CARICOM. 2 years later, in 2015, he is elevated from principal of Cave Hill to Vice-Chancellor of the entire university, again with the concurrence of the CARICOM heads of government. So he now becomes the principal administrative and academic leader of the University of the West Indies. By 2015, remember, the Caribbean, the world and the Caribbean went into a very serious economic crisis in 2007, 2008. The Caribbean was severely affected. That had effects on the University of the West Indies. So Sir Hillary Beckles takes over a university with some serious problems in 2015. He is really now charged with doing a redevelopment job on the University of the West Indies. To give some context, in 2015, the university has governmental arrears. In other words, governments have not paid their fees to the university to the tune of 150 million United States dollars. Even countries like Barbados, which traditionally never in arrears to the University of the West Indies, always supporting education and paying its way. Even Barbados has rung up tremendous arrears to the university. So he takes over a university with some serious problems, and he immediately develops he puts together with his team a developmental program. And basically that developmental program says, look, first of all, we have to elevate the international image and reputation of the university. The university has never been officially ranked. We have to prepare the university for international ranking. We have to get the university ranking up there, and then we can use that ranking and reputation to leverage a developmental program for the university. What we are going to try to do, we are going to try to globalize the university. We're going to try to have it extend out to the world, to have it engage in academic and developmental partnership with outstanding institutions in every continent of the world. And we are going to develop a strategy for the University of the West Indies to sell educational services to the international community in order to generate revenue that will help us to underwrite the education of our own young people of the Caribbean. So they come up with a strategic plan known as the AAA plan. The first A stands for alignment, access, alignment, and agility. So access means that the young people of the Caribbean must have complete access to education at the University of the West Indies. There must be no obstacles put in their way for their university education. Alignment means the university must be more aligned to the developmental needs of the region. And agility means that the university must be very proactive, must gear up itself to be a 21st century university, and must go where the relevant trends take it. So said, so done. The Vice-Chancellor's contract is for 6 years. And over that 6-year period, 2015 to 2021, the University of the West Indies establishes 10 academic centers in every continent of the world: North America, United States, Canada, the UK, Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, China, Cuba, South America. And this is done, in a sense, on the cheap, because it is done through partnerships with outstanding institutions in these parts of the world. The university develops a global online education program where it begins now through the communications technology to sell its services to the world. Most importantly, the university, he prepares the university for international ranking. They take about a 3-year period to look at the criteria for international ranking, to prepare UWI internally to put itself forward for ranking, and they go to the Times Higher Education, the #1 university ranking institution in the world. And by 2019, the University of the West Indies is ranked by the Times Higher Education as the #1 university in the entire Caribbean, among the top 1% of universities in the entire Latin American and Caribbean region, and among the top universities globally of the so-called golden age universities, those between 50 and 100 years old. And incidentally, in the top 4% of all universities worldwide in any category. So they, under Professor Beckles' leadership, they achieved the fundamental objective of securing a top ranking for the university. they engaged in a process of reducing the arrears owed by the Caribbean governments. What he did, he entered into an arrangement with the Caribbean governments. He said to them, look, if you do not have the cash to pay off your arrears, then let us come to a modus operandi in which you can give the university assets in exchange. So for example, the Barbados government has paid off much of its arrears through land assets to the university. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has turned over a US $100 million hospital that it recently built, the Couva Hospital, which the university is now going to use to turn into an offshore medical school to sell services to students outside of the Caribbean to generate revenue for the university. So I'm not going to go much further into the development program. Perhaps that can come out more in the discussion, but suffice to say, Professor Beckles worked out a strategic development plan to take the university forward. I've given you some of the basic contours of the program, and it is well underway and has generated positive results. Now, in 2017, a new chancellor was appointed to the university. So Beckles is appointed Vice-Chancellor 2015 for 6 years. In 2017, a new chancellor is appointed. The chancellor in the university structure is supposed to be higher than the vice-chancellor. However, the chancellor's position is basically a ceremonial position. It is the vice-chancellor who is the principal administrative and academic leader of the university. The man appointed in 2017 is Robert Bermudez. He comes from the traditional Caribbean, white Caribbean business class. He is a Trinidadian. He is not an academic. In fact, he never attended a university. He is the chairman of Massey Holdings, one of the biggest conglomerates in the Caribbean. His family business is Bermudez Biscuits. So anyhow, this guy is made chancellor. I also need to backtrack. I said that Sir Hillary was installed as the head of the CARICOM Reparations Campaign in 2013. By 2017, he has led the establishment of a CARICOM Reparations Research Center at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. So from the very outset of the CARICOM Reparations Campaign, he has involved the university intensively in that reparations campaign. So reparations and this striving for social justice is being infused into the institutional culture of our University of the West Indies. Anyhow, Mr. Bermudez becomes Chancellor in 2017. As Chancellor in 2018, Mr. Bermudez puts together a commission, the Chancellor's Commission, and he gives that commission the mission of inquiring into the governance of the University of the West Indies to come back to him with proposals for reforms of the governance. That commission delivers its report, I think in August 2020. And it is when and the Chancellor accepts it, he accepts the report. So it is now the Chancellor's report. The recommendations are now the Chancellor's recommendations. It is when those recommendations become public that the alarm bells begin to go off. Now, the background to those recommendations becoming public. Professor Beckles' contract, 6-year contract, is coming to an end. He is up for reappointment. The university has a process where a vice-chancellor is up for reappointment. First of all, an independent entity is brought in from outside the region to do a thorough investigation into his performance as Vice-Chancellor. Everything is investigated. His internal work within the university, how students think of him, how the faculty think of him, how the governments think of him, the prime ministers, how the international educational institutions consider him, everything, every aspect. And secondly, so that is done. Also, the process of renewing the contract is commenced at least a year before the contract is to expire, because the chancellor needs to know well in advance if he is going to be reappointed. Through the grapevine, I have learned that Professor Beckles' assessment was excellent. I mean, almost unprecedented for any vice-chancellor of the university, you know, held in high esteem all over the world. So an extremely impressive assessment that should require virtually an automatic renewal of his contract as Vice-Chancellor. However, far from there being this automatic renewal of his contract, the standard procedures for commencing the process of renewing the Vice-Chancellor's contract, somebody puts a hold on these processes. Well, I'm not going to tell you who somebody might have put a hold on those processes. Perhaps you can work that one out. So the time is running out on the contract. The results of this Chancellor's report then become public knowledge. Basically, what this report is doing, first of all, this report is very clever. This report begins by looking at let me see if I get the wording correct. Don't want to. It begins by looking at the historical strengths of the University of the West Indies. Under the heading historical strengths, a beautiful picture is painted of the University of the West Indies. Tremendous historical strengths. But then it goes immediately after to the current state of the University of the West Indies. And under the heading of the current state of the University of the West Indies, it then goes to town on the university and paints such a bleak picture. So anybody who really does not know this institution, if under historical strengths, such a beautiful picture is painted, and then on the current state, you give such a negative picture of the institution, what are you led to believe? You are led to believe that historically, this university was doing extremely well, but is only in the most recent current times that all of these deeply troubling weaknesses and deficiencies have become apparent. So that is the impression given. And having given that impression, the report then goes on to give its recommendations. And I give the recommendations. In a nutshell, what the report says is, look.
Oh yeah, there was a load of goals in the boot as well. It's all right.
So somebody's taking over the, yeah, okay. In a nutshell, what the recommendations are saying is, look, we need to abolish the principal locations of democracy within the university. The principal locations of democracy within the university are the Financial and General Purposes Committee. Every campus has a Financial and General Purposes Committee. The overall community has a Central Financial and General Purposes Committee. This is the committee that brings together the administrators, the lecturers, the representatives of the student body, outside economic advisors and so forth. These are this is like the parliament of the university, where you have democratic debate and disputation, and university policies and decisions are thrashed out. So it says, look, abolish those structures. Instead, let us create an executive committee of the University Council. Now, the University Council is the top council of the university that basically brings together the ministers of education and the representatives of the government and so forth. So it is really like a top policy-making body. But this report says, let us give this body an executive committee that will, really take charge of the real administrative and executive work of the university. And let us have this new executive committee chaired by the Chancellor of the university. So the Chancellor would now go from being a ceremonial figure to basically being the chairman and chief executive officer of the university. The Chancellor would now have tremendous power in and over the university and would be virtually answerable to no one. But that's not all. They also say, let us install 6 advisory committees at the campus level, but also at the overall university level. And let these advisory committees deal with all of the critical issues of the university. But these committees must consist of half of the membership could be university personnel, but the other half must be persons from outside the university. And they must be chaired by a person from outside the university. So basically what you're talking about the private sector. So you're talking about the private sectorization of the university. So the fundamental idea really is that the university cannot be left to academics to run it. It must be placed in the hands of the business sector. Now, mind you, under our current structure, there is a role for business expertise. In fact, some of the top business minds of the Caribbean are intimately involved in the university decision-making processes. The campus councils, all of them bring in top business minds. And the university has actually benefited from some of the leading business executives at the more developmental companies of the Caribbean. So companies like Sagicor, Republic Bank, the Grace Company of Jamaica, and so forth. So, but this reform is basically pushing the university in the direction of what I call a private sectorization of the university. The other thing that they are proposing is, imagine this is a commission on governance. However, the next major recommendation that this commission on governance makes is to recommend that the governments of our region double the fees that our Caribbean students should be required to pay for their education at the University of the West Indies. Right now, we have a funding model in which the whole economic costs of the students' education, the government pays 80% of that cost, and the student pays 20% of that cost. This commission has recommended that that be changed, and that the students henceforth be required to pay 40% of the cost. That is, that they now pay double what they are currently paying, and the government's reduced to 60% of the cost. Now, how that becomes relevant to a commission on governance, because on structures of governance, I don't know. Why would a university commission want to recommend to governments that they make it more difficult for their young people to access university education? It is incredible. Beckles' version is just the opposite, that we should not be putting more restraints on our students' access to tertiary education. Already, the Caribbean region has one of the lowest university enrollment rates in the world. So our emphasis needs to be on enhancing access. That's why his plan was known as the AAA plan, beginning with access. So his plan is about the university finding ways to generate revenues to underwrite the cost of our student education. The Chancellor's plan is taking it in the exactly opposite direction. So the other thing is, you know, the Chancellor sets up a commission to inquire into governance, and the commission comes back with a report in which the #1 recommendation is a recommendation that would install the Chancellor. That would install the Chancellor as basically the chairman and CEO of the university. I mean, there's something a little bit peculiar about that, you set up a commission and the #1 recommendation it comes forward with is that recommendation. Very, very peculiar. So I got involved in the issue. When out of the blue, an editorial appeared in Barbados' leading newspaper entitled Time for Change. And what was so strange about this editorial, usually editorials in the newspaper do not carry photographs with them. However, on this occasion, here was this portrait-like photograph of the Chancellor, Mr. Bermudez. And the editorial is promoting this gentleman as the savior of the university. And the editorial is telling us that if the university was a private sector corporation, how much better it would be run. And what makes Mr. Bermudez so well qualified to save the university is that Mr. Bermudez is not an academic, but is a successful businessman who is accustomed to making the tough decisions, and the UWI will be no exception. And that there's this report, and that this report needs to be dealt with urgently. In fact, the editorial goes on to say it must be dealt with as urgently as the very next day when the Cavell campus is holding its council meeting. So persons like myself, you know, what is this all about? What is this all about? What is this media campaign all about? And so I responded saying, this is an Alice in Wonderland editorial, because this editorial is out of sync with the tremendous work that we know as graduates of the university that Sir Hillary Beckles has done in globalizing the university, in taking it to the spot of the #1 university in the entire Caribbean, yet none of that is reflected in this editorial. So somebody is trying to do some kind of propaganda job with this editorial. And from there, the whole thing became a public issue in the Caribbean, and people have responded. So I think that paints a picture. Let me end there and we can go to questions.
Thank you very much. Steve, will be there. Dave. Thank you very much, David, for that presentation. Can people hear me? Yes, you can do it.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Come on.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you so much for that. I found myself shaking with rage at different points of your speech. I mean, it's just really awful what they're trying to do in the Caribbean. They want to take us back to the days of slavery, really, basically, when they, as we know, at the time of independence, so many of the countries, the literacy rates was so low, was after 300 years of slavery and enslavement and colonization, our educational standards were some of the worst in the world. They would like to take us back to that. I got very angry because it just smacks to me of the way in which they've gone about this to privatize our education, to make those that are less disadvantaged in the first place having the least chance of getting to university, thereby trying to create another elite class from the Caribbean. I think we have to oppose this. My question to you was going to be, what can we do really, you know, what can CLS do? How do you see us acting to put pressure on those that will try to change things in the region?
Well, just to explain the process. So this report, this is a report, and these are recommendations. The university, now I should say that all university chancellors do have the power to set up such commissions and to do these kinds of studies into the governance of the university. And this is not the first such chancellor's report. This one is, what makes this one striking is the type of recommendations that it has put forward. But the university has a procedure. So a report like this would go to a number of internal bodies within the university to be analyzed. So an analysis would be done of these proposed recommendations. What would they mean for the university if they were implemented? And that analysis, along with the report, will ultimately be made available to the University Council. And it is the University Council that will make the decision. Now, as I said, the locus of power of the University Council is really the governments of the region, in the form of the ministers of education. So we are now in the process of, the debate has been joined, and a number of entities, some within the university, some outside, are making their views known. And so the Caribbean Labor Solidarity could be part of that process to weigh in with its own analysis of this report, with a view to influencing the University Council when it comes to make decisions on this matter. I think that personally, that in terms of Sir Hillary Beckles himself, I think he is far too established as an academic, as an international activist, as almost an international statesman. I mean, Sir Hillary Beckles has been invited by the Secretary General of the United Nations to serve on, I'll give you some of his accolades, invited by the UN Secretary General to serve on the UN Science Advisory Board on Sustainable Development. He has been installed by UNESCO as their editor of their Global Africa project. Recently, he was invited by UNESCO to be an expert on UNESCO's Futures of Higher Education project. So he's recognized as an international expert on the future of higher education. I mean, you know, so he is, and in addition to all of that, through the grapevine, we have learned that he's had this astonishingly positive assessment of his performance. So I don't think that, I think Sir Hillary will be reappointed Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. And that is critical, because that is going to determine what is to be the social ethos of our UE. Is it to be the social justice ethos embedded in the reparations campaign and the whole idea of reparations, or is it to be the corporatist private sector ethos? What is to be the value system of our students, of our university graduates? Is it to be a social justice value system, or is it to be, you know, a corporatist capitalist value system? So I think that's where we're at. I suspect that this is a battle that people with my point of view, that point of view is going to win out. But the problem is, in the meantime, damage is being done. Damage is being done to the reputation of the University of the West Indies. Damage is being done to the reputation of Sir Hillary Beckles. And damage is being done to the CARICOM Reparations campaign, because you cannot damage the reputation of Sir Hillary Beckles without damaging the CARICOM Reparations campaign, because the two are so intertwined. And I think that I'm getting back now to what can the Caribbean Labour Congress do, in addition to making your input into this issue of how the Chancellor's report should be seen and how it should be treated. In addition to that, we are going to have to go, all of us are going to have to go on a very proactive campaign to turn a negative into a positive, to repair, I said damage is being done, we must make sure that that damage is only temporary. So what we have to do, we have to go on an international campaign to educate the international community about the positive, the most recent and positive developments, both in relation to the University of the West Indies and to the CARICOM Reparations Commission under the leadership of Sir Hillary Beckles. And there's so much that is positive that we have to tell to the world. But let me stop there from now and take some more questions.
That's great, David. I think we're fortunate to have some university lecturers and trade unionists at the university on our executive, and we will discuss this further to see what initiatives and what our next moves would be at our next executive meeting. You mentioned, you know, some of the great things that Hillary has done, and you haven't even, for instance, touched on the reparations that Glasgow University has, you know, offered to the University of the West Indies, and you know, just one something he's done, and we know there's many other initiatives that he's got out there. You know, he's a real champion for the reparations movement, and I'm not surprised that the powers that be might even try to tempt him away with some fantastic post to leave the university. But the little we know of Sir Hillary is that he's a man of principle and integrity, and we hope he stays with our movement and stays with the University of the West Indies. Our entire region depends on our university being a great success and being the kind of institution that will develop not only for a small elite class, but for the whole region and for all its peoples. Thank you very much. Okay, I shall bring in some questions now. I shall remind people that usually when dealing with questions, we like for everybody to have a chance to speak before someone speaks twice. So on that principle, I'll put forward some of the questions that are there. People might want to come back to it, but you will have to maybe wait for a little chance to get back in there. Let me just scroll down. I'm trying to do this myself, looking at the questions.
Glenroy's raised his hand as well.
Okay, we'll come to. Okay, shall Glenroy's raise his hand? Okay, Glenroy, as a member and somebody who we know is invited through your trade union, David, to speak in London, you get first preference. Where are you? There's Glenroy.
Thank you, Luke. I don't know about first preference.
You're first.
I think, you know, let's be very clear that this is an attack about the reparation campaign and its advancement. So I think, you know, we should be upfront with that as much as we can. And thank you, David, for that report. I'm just really wondering, in a practical sense, and I don't want to see it as revenge. It probably should be, but I don't want to see it as that. Does the Chancellor come up for review? And any idea when that is likely to be? Because I think that, you know, we should mark his cards now. We should say that we see this as a deliberate attack against the reparation campaign, against Hillary directly, and the idea of increasing the fees for participation in the university is an attack on the poor people of the region. So let's be very, very open and clear about this. Those issues are things that we have fought against and hope to increase our educational opportunity for peoples within the Caribbean. So how dare he try to price people out of it? So I just wondered, you know, is he up for any sort of review that we can help with in marking his cards?
Thank you very much. Thank you, brother.
I think the Chancellor's term is a 7-year term. So you do the calculation. He assumed office in 2017. So he will probably serve out his term. And yeah, I don't want to say too much about that. You know what the Chancellor will say, that he set up a commission, and that the commission consisted of eminent personalities, and that it is they who produced the report and not him. He, however, adopted the report, accepted it, and it is now the Chancellor's report. The recommendations are his recommendations. So he has responsibility for these recommendations.
Thank you very much for your answer, David. There's another question. I'm just going to pick one of them seniors from Margaret Andrews, saying thank you, David, for this talk, and a reminder that racism and colonialism still rules us, and how can we, living outside of the region, stand with and support the cause? I think you've partially answered it, but if you want to have another go at that, David.
Well, you know, I began by saying that one of the main instruments that we are going to deploy to get through the existential crisis we face is that CARICOM Reparations campaign. Recently, you know, we have Sir Hillary, who is chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, but above him and above the commission is the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations. That's a committee of 6 CARICOM heads of government, chaired by the Prime Minister of Barbados. And that committee met in February of this year with Sir Hillary and members of his commission. And we have come up with a new initiative, a recalibration and refocusing of the reparations campaign. And it is really taking shape nicely. I would say we now have a 4-pronged reparations campaign. In the first prong of that effort, we are targeting the national governments of Western Europe. we are saying to them, you are primarily responsible for the crime that was committed in the Caribbean. You looted, you are primarily responsible for the looting of the Caribbean, for the looting, the siphoning off of the fruits of the labor of generations of Black Caribbean people. And you must know, you must not believe that you can simply walk away with your ill-gotten gains. We are requiring you to come back to the scene of the crime and to engage with us in a discussion over a whole series of developmental programs, capital transfers, debt cancellation that you must engage in with us to help repair some of that damage. That is known as the CARICOM 10-point reparatory justice program. That is targeted directly at the national governments of Western Europe. But there's a second front that we have opened up, and that is targeting the private sector institutions of Europe and North America, the banks, insurance companies, universities, trading companies that were implicated in or that profited from the centuries of criminal enslavement and colonization. And what has been decided is that we are going to establish a reparative international development fund. And these institutions, your Lloyds of London, your Green King Company, all of the institutions that were implicated in those centuries of criminality will be requested and required to make reparations payments. The third prong of the campaign is we recognize that the international economic and political order that exists in the world today has its roots in those centuries of criminal enslavement of African people, criminal colonization of African people, and that as a result, the formerly enslaved and colonized peoples and nations have been inserted in this international order in a structurally subservient and exploitative manner. And so we are targeting these international institutions for reforms. We are targeting them, we are saying to them that because of that history of exploitation, our nations and people now have a right to development. And these institutions are now bound by a duty to facilitate the development of our nations and people. So it cannot be business as usual. So we are challenging all of these institutions. We are saying to them they are obligated to have a much more proactive and supportive approach to facilitating the development of our countries, and particularly in a time of existential crisis like the time that we are now in. And then the fourth prong has to do where we look inward. We look at the trauma that has been done psychologically and culturally to our people as a result of those centuries of trauma. And where we look inwards and undertake the self-directed cultural and psychological repairs that we need to do for ourselves. So when you examine how that CARICOM reparations plan is shaping up, you can see that it is really a very comprehensive developmental stratagem, not only for the Caribbean countries, but for all of our people, wherever they are located. In fact, one of the decisions made at the recent CARICOM Heads of Government meeting on the 25th of February is that we are reaching out to Africa, to the African Union. We are inviting the African Union to get on board, to partner with us in the reparations campaign. We are proposing to them that we have an CARICOM African Union Reparations Head of Government Summit, and that we use that as a building block towards a joint Africa-Caribbean engagement with the governments of Europe over reparations. So we are internationalizing this struggle, and there's a place for all of these people, of all of our people, and even for activists beyond our own Black community in this international struggle.
Great. Thank you very much for that, David. There's in the chat I can see there's so much appreciation for the way you've presented this, and people are really appreciating how clearly you've stated the case. Munira Folan has put a question: is this that that class is one of the issues here, but is there a global agenda as well? And also another question from Michelle Santiwa. What was the students' response to all of this? The students at the university, how they responded to this?
We have not heard vocal responses from the students to date. My own understanding is that when the review of the Vice-Chancellor's performance was done, that he was found to be very, very enthusiastically supported by the students. But we have, the students have not yet weighed in on this current issue. This issue really came to light in the month of March. I think it really came to public. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. The first inkling we had of it was a letter, a column in one of the Trinidadian newspapers by Selwyn Cudjoe, a very well-known Trinidadian academic. So that was the first public notice we had that something was afoot, something was amiss. An article by Selwyn Cudjoe. That was earlier this year, but there was an amount of vagueness around it because we didn't really fully appreciate where Selwyn Cudjoe was coming from. The editorial in the Nation newspaper of Barbados was early in March. And that is when it really became clear, because Selwyn Cudjoe didn't really speak about a chancellor's report. His focus was more on Mr. Bermudez versus Sir Hillary Beckles. The Nation editorial in early March made clear all of the parameters of this issue. The report, the attack on the university, the fact that the private sector was being put forward as the model, and that Mr. Bermudez was being put forward as the savior, and he was being put forward as a savior precisely because he is not an academic and is a successful businessman. So the Nation editorial made it extremely clear what the issue or what the issues were all about. So I would say that the issue has really only been engaged since that editorial in March. So I guess it is still early days yet. But yes, we need to hear from the student body, and we have not heard from them yet.
Okay, thank you. Another question up there from Pam Solomon, who is asking, what about countries like Venezuela, who have benefited from the transatlantic slave trade, and the African people have been struggling to survive? Are they expected to pay reparations? Will Venezuela be paying reparations?
Our reparations, no. I mean the government of Venezuela, no. In fact, remember when Simon Bolivar was down and out, when he was down and out in his campaign to attack Spanish colonialism, he went to Haiti. And he went to Haiti in the 1815, 1816. And it was the Haitians who gave him the the resources to continue his liberation struggle against Spanish imperialism and to liberate and bring about the independence of South America. But what did the Haitians require of him? They said, look, the only thing we want from you, every piece of land that you liberate, you must abolish slavery. And Bolivar attempted to do so. So the campaign for the abolition of slavery in Latin America was really kicked off by Bolivar's, well, I shouldn't say kicked off, because of course the slaves, our enslaved ancestors were always fighting to free themselves. So let's be very clear about that. But through the Haitian influence, they injected into Bolivar's anti-colonial campaign this imperative to abolish slavery. So even though the abolition of slavery in Latin America was a staggered process, not exactly completed when every country became independent. In fact, in Brazil, Brazil was the very last country to abolish slavery in 1888. But for the vast majority of countries in Latin America, I think we have to say that we would have to look to Spain, the colonizing power, who were mostly responsible. Of course, there may be families, there may be companies, there may be institutions that were implicated and that benefited, and that the African Latino population of those countries will be targeting for reparations. I don't know enough about that campaign to speak decisively on it. So far as we are concerned in the Caribbean, we are targeting all of the European countries that were implicated in enslavement in the Caribbean. And it is a large number. I mean, you name it, whether it is Denmark, Sweden. In fact, I think recently we have found that even Russia had a foray into enslavement in the Caribbean. So we are targeting virtually the whole of Western Europe. We are targeting all of those companies and even family fortunes that exist today. And as I said, we are now developing this new front where we're actually looking at the entire international economic and political order. I think that's the best I can answer that particular question.
Thank you very much, David. I think, can I be heard? I see a face is appeared in front of me. Are you there, Steve? There's a face. Mashon King is up there. On the screen, yes. Okay, that's moved now. Thank you very much. I see Colleen.
All I see is that William Acker has put his hand up.
Okay. Colleen as well had her hand up. So after that hand, can we get Colleen next? And then we've got Bentley. Thanks. That's three.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me all right? Thank you. Yeah, for a great talk. I wanted to know a bit more about the power of the government ministers, the education ministers, over the University of the West Indies, how much power they actually have, and have they expressed a view about what the future of the university should look like?
Okay, thank you. David, do you want to take a few questions and then answer? We get another question.
Let me answer that one quickly. Yeah. Let me answer that one quickly.
Okay,
the governments do have the ultimate. The governments do have the ultimate power. The vast majority of the governments have a very positive relationship with Sir Hillary. In fact, one of the outstanding achievements of the last 6 years is that the university developed its 5th campus. The university had, when Sir Hillary took over, the university had 3 landed campuses, one in Jamaica, one in Trinidad and Tobago, and one in Barbados, 3 landed campuses, and then they had an open campus that offered online education. But over the past 6 years, under Sir Hillary's leadership, a fourth landed campus, has been established. That is the Five Islands campus that was established in Antigua. And that was established because the small islands of the Eastern Caribbean, of the so-called OECS region, these are the islands of St. Vincent, Grenada, Dominica, Antigua, St. Lucia, etc., who traditionally have been seen as the lesser developed countries of Caribbean. The bigger islands, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, the bigger territories. So the small Eastern Caribbean islands have felt for some time that they have not been, getting all that is really due to them from the University of the West Indies. So Hillary hearkened to that cry, recognizing that some tensions were developing in the relationship between the smaller islands, the bigger territories. And so the OECS region now has a new landed campus known as the Five Islands campus in Antigua. So you could well imagine that the political leadership of those territories are very, very appreciative to Sir Hillary for the leadership in delivering the Five Islands campus. So ultimately, we will hear the governments will speak. The governments will speak, but I think that there's tremendous respect and support for Sir Hillary right across the region. In governmental circles, there's tremendous respect and support for him in the tremendous job that he has done as chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And we need to remember, he did not appoint himself to these positions. The CARICOM heads of government requested him to take on the leadership of the reparations campaign. And it is the CARICOM governments that were ultimately approved his elevation to the Vice-Chancellorship. So some people, some of the critics have been pushing this case that the leader of the university should not also be the leader of the reparations movement. So this is one of the attacks. One of the attacks is that the university is going to be compromised by having its leadership so deeply involved in the reparations campaign. As Luke has pointed out, far from that being the case, the university has actually benefited from a reparations settlement between the University of Glasgow and the University of the West Indies to the tune of £20 million. And I mean, there's so many, this argument has been subverted so many times. Just recently, last week, in fact, Eon Realty, the Silicon Valley company, Eon Realty gave a grant of US $25 million to UWI to support the development of the UWI Global Campus online. The university is transitioning, the open campus is being transitioned into a global open campus. And this guy, Elon Musk, his company, his Silicon Valley company, recognizing the futuristic visioning of where the university wants to take the open campus in terms of transforming it into a global online campus, has given a grant of US $25 million. So, you know, every time these critics put forward an argument, the actual facts and developments subvert those arguments and attacks.
Thank you very much, David. I think Pauline, and then we'll have one other question after for the time that we've got left.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say a really prime candidate is Richard Drax. Richard Drax is a Tory MP for South Devon and the richest MP in the whole of the House of Commons. And the family made money through the slave trade. I mean, if that's not bad enough, one of the things at the moment is that he hasn't filed any records. This is talking about tax and, you know, earnings and that, since I think it is 2009. And he's got away with it. Well, do you know anyone else who would have got away with it like that? Very unlikely. To us who, if we do work, it's always PAYE. And I just think that, you know, he is, and that's, I'm actually writing something for that's going to go hopefully on the website about Drax anyway. But I think he's a prime candidate for, you know, people that I would hope that the campaign went after him as well. I mean, if nothing else, he can get probably lots of tax relief about paying things like that. But it's absolutely disgusting. And that's why I think it shouldn't just be for, you know, people, institutions. It should also be for people like him as well, that they have to pay, and countries, obviously. So yeah, that's just the point I wanted to make. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can we get David, do you want to respond to that? About Drax?
No, she's absolutely correct. And yes, we will be targeting family fortunes. Sir Richard Drax, the original Sir Richard Drax, goes way back to the 1630s and 40s in Barbados.
Yeah.
It's the original, if you wanted to identify as the primary architect of the British system of plantation-based slavery, it goes right back to the original Sir Richard Drax in Barbados in the 1640s. He was the one that carried out the original British Caribbean experiment into sugar, slavery-based sugar production. If I leave my house now and I drive for about 15 minutes, I will arrive at the original Drax Hall plantation, including the original Drax Hall plantation house that is almost 400 years old. The Drax family siphoned off the fruits of the labor of countless generations of enslaved people in Barbados. It was siphoned off and taken to the UK, where the family fortune now exists in the UK. But the roots of that family fortune are in plantation slavery right here, not only in Barbados, because he, having succeeded in Barbados, he then was in the vanguard of taking the Barbados model to Jamaica. When Jamaica was conquered for the British, actually the British expedition that conquered Jamaica in 1655 came from Barbados. And Drax then, so there's a Drax Hall in Jamaica as well. And then of course they went to the UK. So yes, that Reparative International Development Fund, right now, the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations and the CARICOM Reparations Commission will be collectively doing the technical work to establish that fund. But it is that fund will become the repository for reparations payments from the Drax Family Fortune, Barclays Bank, Lloyds of London, the Bank of England, you know, you name it, Church of England. Yes, so that is coming, Ms. Braffett. That is on its way.
Great, thank you very much. Steve, I think we had, I saw Bentley Cunningham had his hand up. Did you have a question? I think he's put his hand up again. If we can get Bentley, and then maybe we can think about wrapping up, unless there's any other burning question. Bentley.
Yes, thank you. I think that we have to be a bit more focused on what is the central problem here, which is the, as David said, the attempt to hijack the university governance and management by the private sector. I think one of the weapons that are easily used to counteract this kind of thing is to write a position statement. Once you've written a position statement, not dealing necessarily with reparation, but dealing with that encroachment, that attempt to supersede the university governance structure. And in fact, not just UWIs, but it seems alarming to me that that is a mass deviation from how universities are run throughout the world. Once you can write a position statement, you're able to disseminate it to us in the PNP. We send it around to our network and to the Jamaica Cultural Association, the Jamaica Diaspora UK. I think that we need first and foremost a position statement, just listing the objections that everyone would agree with, that we can disseminate. What do you think of that?
I think you're on target. Bear in mind, the Chancellor's report does not mention the word reparations. Okay, so the Chancellor's report does not focus on reparations. Now, some people may think that reparations is in the background of all of this, but on the face of it, reparations does not appear. The Chancellor's report does not even focus on Sir Hillary as an individual. The Chancellor's report is couched around issues of governance. And I think Bentley is very correct that if we take the Chancellor's report at face value, what it is about two competing concepts of the governance of a university. And what is being proposed here is what I call the private sectorization of the university. And are we, even this business about this executive committee that would be the real power institution under this proposed new structure that the Chancellor will lead. A university is a unique organism. A university is about education. Now, an administrative decision, any administrative decision in a university has to ipso facto also be an academic institution, an academic decision. There is no purely administrative decision.
David, if I can just interject, David, I know all that. I'm just asking. There's a strategy called people can write a position statement listing all those things that you find objectionable to the report. Do you think that CLS should proceed now as a fight back to write a position statement?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just strengthening your point, because they are proposing that a man who has no experience of a university culture, this is the point I'm making. They are proposing that a man who never even went to a university, who has no experience of university culture, of what type of institution a university is, can become the primary administrative and academic leader of the university. And I say they have to be proposing that he will be the primary, both administrative and academic leader, because in a university context, every administrative decision or position is also an academic decision or position. So if as an administrator, you decide that you're going to cut back here, that decision has to be informed with some appreciation of its the academic impact, the importance of the academic importance of the area that you may be cutting back in. So I'm strengthening your position, Bentley. I'm saying, yes, I agree with you that that should be done. And these critical educational and governance issues should be focused on. And you can go further. Once you do your document, you can submit it. You can submit it to the CARICOM governments. You can submit it to the prime ministers. You can submit it to the ministers of education. Once you do your documents, you can submit them to the newspapers so that they become part of the public discourse. You can do a myriad of things with your positions.
Thank you very much, David. I think it's about time for us to be wrapping up now, and just to say thank you again for speaking to us in such an eloquent way and explaining all the situations that is happening in the university, and very good suggestions as to what we can do. We will be meeting on the executive in a week's time, and we'll be making some decisions about what action to take. So I'm sure people will join me in saying thank you very much.
Before
celebrate.
You got a question from Charles Critchlow for quite a while now.
A question, where is it?
Oh, sorry, that's me. Yes, good afternoon. It was just really, I think David clarified my point in the last intervention, but really I think it's been a great event. I'm speaking from Manchester in the United Kingdom. And I think that the level of clarity that we just heard from David in relation to how this has evolved over the last month, I think we need that level of clarity in relation to what is behind this sort of ideological drive that's behind Mr. Bermudez. Because you might win the battle in terms of, yes, Hillary might be reappointed and that, Bermudez might be gone in 3 years. But I kind of detect that there's a bigger battle, a bigger war ideologically behind this corporatism that seems to be driving all of this. And I think that's where, for me, I would need a lot more clarity of the kind that we just beautifully heard from David Commissiong.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, is Steve there?
Yes.
Steve, you're there. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of the meeting, and I'd like us to just appreciate David for doing such a wonderful presentation and giving us such a wonderful time. The traditional way. Thank you. We will be following up this issue. It's not an issue that's going away, so we hope to keep you tuned in. And as soon as there's new developments and whatever action we are taking, we might want to involve some of the people who've been listening to this program. If you're not a member, please join us. It's just great that we've got your contact, so we can contact you to inform you about our meeting. Our strength is only as much as our membership. And so you're very important in this role in fighting what is happening in the Caribbean and supporting our academics who are prepared to stand up for us. And we will, as CLS, be fighting on their behalf in any way that we can in London. So thank you very much again. And thank you all. David, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Thanks. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks.
Thanks, comrade. Take care.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much to David.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a nice Easter.
Yeah.
Bye all, thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
And from the technical organisation of this meeting, I'd like to thank David for being there on time, ready to go. That was much appreciated. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Please look, I'm off. Okay, bye.